It's okay. No problem. No problem. Thank you very, very much. Okay, so Zok Tehillah Gemara yesterday was Daf Nun Aleph, and we had a question of what is required in order to be able to collect from Nechasim Shabadim. Was it Lefi Shein Ksuvim? Does it have to be written down, or is it enough if it's Kitsuvim? It's even though it's not written down, and Rashi learns that even though it's a milval peh, nevertheless, if it's a set amount of how much it's supposed to be, then it's also something that you could collect from Mishubadim. And Tosfos is me'ir that of course it can't mean like what Rashi says that it's a regular milval peh, because never do you find that a milval peh you can collect from the Chasim Mishubadim. Rather, it's referring to some fixed expense that's not a milva, such as someone who made up with his wife to support his children. And what's the difference between that and any milval peh? The Tosfos is normally when you lend money, you don't do it in a public forum to broadcast that you're lending money. So it's normally tried to be kept hush hush. If it wasn't for the fact that there was a star, nobody would know about it. However, such an event, like someone marrying somebody, and by the wedding being mekabel upon himself, that's something that people would know about, and therefore it would be a fair argument to say that since it's kotzev, it's 5 years of support, therefore it's something that you could collect from the Chasim Mishubadim. That was the Gemara Shaila. The Gemara ended up. Ksuba means it's not specifically written. It wasn't written in the Ksuba. They just made a verbal agreement between the two of them. Not everybody can't do it because not everybody marries a woman who brought in a daughter with him to the marriage, right? This is not a Tnai Ksuba. It was a private agreement that they made. Yeah, it's not a Tnai Ksuba. It's correct. If it's a Tnai Ksuba, I think it's considered Ksuba. What we learned on the base. So the Gemara ended up bringing a third opinion, and that was from Rav Nosson. Because Rav Nosson said that it's not dependent in Ksuvim, and it's not dependent in Kitsuvim. It's all about what came first. So the discussion that we had was Ein Moitziin Lachilas Peiros from the Chasim Mishubadim. And remember the case was where Bob stole a field from Reuben. Bob stole a field from Reuben and sold it to Shimon. Shimon improved the field. Now Shimon wants to go after Bob. Bob sold properties after he sold the property to Shimon. So therefore, Shimon wants to go after all the Lekuchos who bought property from Bob to retrieve his money that he paid for his field. And the question is, can he also go after those Lekuchos for money that he spent on the field and for Shvach that he was mishpiach the field? The Mishnah says, no, you cannot take Mechilas Peiros. And Rav Nosson says, it all depends. So what happened? First Shimon bought a field for Bob. Then Yehuda bought a field for Bob. And then, so when Yehuda bought the field for Bob, the field that Shimon bought was still the same field in the same condition as it was when he bought it. But later on, after Yehuda bought another field for Bob, only then was Shimon mashbiach the field. It happened later. Zok Reb Nosson, there he can't collect from the Chasim Mishubadim. There Shimon can't collect from Levi or Yehuda's field. You know why? Because when they bought their field, they had no idea that you were Mishabech. You were Mishabech yet. So when they assessed their potential liabilities, the potential liability was only for the value of the field that you bought, not for the Shvach, because the Shvach was not yet in existence. But if you were Mashbiach the field, and by the time Bob sold the next field, your field was even more improved. If that's the point, Avada, you can collect from the Chasim Mishubadim. You know why? Because any person who buys a field from Bob knows that Bob sold the field to Shimon and knows that Shimon had already improved the value of that field. And therefore, they're liable. So therefore, it has nothing to do with Ksuvim or Ksuvim. It's all a matter of what Shibud came first. So the Gemara suggested is actually a Machlokes Tanoim about how it's done. Is it totally in Ksuvim? Is it totally in Ksuvim? Or is it totally in what came first? That's how the Gemara remained. Then the Gemara discussed this halacha that a moitzi mitzia never has to swear, and because of a tikkun chachamim, a tikkun ha'olam, who's going to want to return an aveda if they're always going to be suspect and they're going to be forced to swear? The Gemara brought a sheet of Rabbi Yitzchak, who doesn't hold like that, and he holds that there are cases where, of course, you're going to swear. If I bring back a money pouch, and the guy claims that there are two money pouches found together, I'm going to have to swear. If I agree that I found two behemoths, but I claim I gave one back already, and now I'm bringing back the second, I wouldn't have to swear. It's a moitzah mitzvah. But Rabbi Yitzchak said he would have to swear. The Gemara said that Rabbi Yitzchak is not alone. He could rely on Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who says as well that you do swear, even though you're technically a moitzah mitzvah. When I say technically moitzah mitzvah, it's a lav davka that you found a mitzvah. Shad is, if it wasn't for you, there would have been no knowledge that he Toveya has that you have actually owed him anything. So the case here, Rabbi Yaakov is talking about that we're comparing to Moitzah Mitzvah is if somebody goes over to a person and says, your father died recently, but unknown to you, I borrowed from your father $1,000, but before he died, I paid him back 500. So I owe you 500. So that's like a Moedah b'miktas. So the Gemara ends up saying a very interesting shayla. The Gemara shares with us the side of why is it that Moedah b'miktas swears. Zok to Gemara, and this is with Rashi's approach. Really, I shouldn't have to swear at all. Why should forget I have a migu that I shouldn't have to swear? Be happy that I admitted I owed you 500 out of 1,000. Because if I really wanted to be a liar, if I'm Takaganav like you say I am, I'm not giving you back your full 1,000, I could have lied better. I could have said I don't owe you a penny. So the fact that I said I owe you half when I could have said I don't owe you a penny, that's a great migu. So therefore I shouldn't have to swear at all. And we're speaking even in the case where you're Tevemi, even when Reuben goes to Shimon and says, Shimon, you owe me 1,000. And Shimon said, no, I only owe you 500. Shimon should for sure believe. Because if Shimon was a crook, wouldn't he be denied everything? Why don't you say such a migun? Because we have a rule that ein odom meis panav b'fnei bal chayvod. Shimon doesn't have the option of totally denying it. You know why? Because Shimon couldn't possibly deny it. When you borrowed money from somebody, there's no way you could deny to his face. You cannot do that. There's a shaila. Why is it that I won't deny it to your face? Will I not deny it to your face because here, after you did me a favor and lent me money, I'm going to go stab you in the back? That's one option. The other option is I can never lie to someone's face if he knows that I know that he's lying. We all know that I'm lying. It's too humiliating to lie outright to someone's face. Those are the two reasons why I might not lie. Now, let's get back to the Moedah b'miktas. Why does he swear? He doesn't have a migui because for one reason or another, he didn't have the option to say that he owes nothing because he couldn't bring himself to do that. So now that means what you're saying is that we're choshesh that he's lying, and we're choshesh that he's stealing $500. He's choshed amamuna. You know there's a rule that choshed amamuna choshed dami hashvuah. We'll never make a known ganiv swear because we're being machshel him because he'll have no problem about swearing false. So how could you make a moedah b'miktas swear, being that we've determined that we don't trust him, and he's prepared to steal $500? So how can we trust him to make a shvuah? How can you let him make a shvuah? The teretz is because he's not such a bad guy. Because he doesn't really intend to steal $500. He's not stealing 500. Really, what he wants to do is his real problem is he doesn't have enough money to pay back. He only has 500. So he's telling the owner, I don't owe you anything. He's telling the owner, I only owe you 500. And he's going to give the 500. And he's hoping that eventually he'll come up with more money, and then later on, he'll return the other 500. The owner won't refuse to take it later if it's really owed to him. So he's not a gun. Don't make him such a gun. He's trying to push it off. And therefore, if you ask him to swear, he will not be choshesh hashvuah. He will not swear falsely, and he will have to admit that he really took the other 500. That is the mechanics of how Moedah b'miktas works. Therefore, Zok to Gemara, it's all predicated on the fact that he doesn't have the guts to lie to the malva and tell him I owe you nothing. So the question is, would I have that same attitude towards the malva's children? If the reason why a person cannot face the malva and lie to him is because I owe you money, you did me a favor, I can't stab you in the back, so he would have that same sentiment towards the malva's children. So therefore, having the same interaction with the malva's children would also lead to a shvuah. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov held, I won't have that same sentiment to the children, because the reason why a moedah b'miktas cannot be meized to lie, is because I can't lie to your face when I know that you know that I'm lying. I'm not a politician. A regular, normal human being cannot lie to someone's face when they know the person knows they're lying. With the children of the Malva, you don't have that problem because the children of the Malva don't actually know what happened. So it's easier for someone to lie. Therefore, he does have a migul and he's potter even from the shul. That is the machlokes of Losam Yaakov and the other Tanoim is Rabbi's Yisoid. The Rabbi says the mechanics of why you make a Moed Mikta swear and you trust the Shvuah is because this guy's in between yes and no. And therefore, he make a Shvuah. If you don't have those circumstances, then there's no Shvuah made. What's that? I think Rashi says that. I think I saw that in Rashi. Let me have a look. I think it was Rashi. It was not a Rashi at the time. I saw it somewhere. Okay. So Zok to Gemara. The Yisoymim shesamchu etzel balabayis. So we're literally going from world to world in every blot over here. So now we're learning the sugi of apotropos. This is the main sugi of apotropos. Now you need to ask, if someone is doing something good on behalf of Yisoymim, for instance, what do I need a special classification of apotropos? What's wrong with the regular rule? Zochin l'adam shlei b'fanav. Everywhere in the Torah, you can do something good on behalf of somebody. So the Torah says that apotropos works sometimes even when what he did worked against the Yosy. Sometimes the apotropos made a mistake, and we're going to see how we deal with some things like that. So therefore, an apotropos is a higher level of schia because it's some people call it super schia because it works even in places where schia won't work because we need to create some type of guardian for the Yosem and for his assets. So let's see what the Heilige Mishnah says. Yisoymin shesamchu etel balabayis. Either it just happened. Someone was there and the Yisoymin were by him and he helped them out, but there was no official appointment. Or if the father formally appointed an apotropos, chayiv la'aser perisayim, he's muhiv to ma'aser their pairs. So here we're taking something away from the Yisoyim, right? We're giving away matnas kuna, but the apotropos is muhiv to be mafresh trumas and maishris on behalf of the Yisoyim. We're going to soon see. We'll get into that in a second. It's a good point. Because how else are they going to eat? How is that bad, right? What if the apotropos came to be because the father of the Yisoyim had appointed him? Halach is Yishava. At the end of his tenure, he has to swear up to Rashi, he has to swear that he doesn't have anything of theirs. Whatever was theirs, whatever is part of the estate is there safe on behalf of the Yisrael. But we knew Bezdin, if he was an apotropos, because Bezdin appointed him, lo yishava. Then we don't force him to swear. On the flip side, it's exactly the opposite. If Bezdin was mamana you, then you have to swear. But if the father was mamana you, then you don't have to swear. And we're going to see the reasoning for that shortly. Or mini. Atem v'loy shutfim. There's a pasuk by Hafrosha's Truma, Ken Tishrimu Atem. And we learn from there that only you could make something Trumas and Maishers. Nobody can do it on your behalf unless you formally appointed him as a shliach. In other words, you cannot do Hafrosha's Truma through Zchia. And one of the Svaras said is, Zachin la'adam shaloi b'fanav means, if it's something's good for you, I can be kind on your behalf. But that doesn't mean if something's good for you, I can take it away from you on your behalf. So Zchia doesn't work to give someone the right to be mafresh trumas. Atem v'loy shutzim, atem v'loy erisim, atem v'loy apotropsin, atem, and Rashi says this last atem is explaining all the previous drushes that we make. Why dafka you and nobody else can do it for you? Because v'loy atoydim es she'enoi shaloi. You cannot take truma from somebody else's stuff. As Rashi says on the fourth line, Hach Sefer time of duration. Kloimer atem mimayit hatorim she'enoi shaloi. You cannot take truma even if it's benefiting to somebody. But whatever the case is, you cannot do the mafish trumas through schia. So and the apotropos can't either. So how could the Mishnah say that the apotropos is mechayev laser? He can't. Very simple. Kan lahachil kan laniach. If they need what to eat, and they're not going to have what to eat, unless you're mafish trumas and maishris, they're the bare minimum, what's needed for now, here and now, that you could do. However, if you want to be masakin the whole granary, or you're doing it to store and to sell, that you're not allowed to be masakin. So you're asking why should there be different hachal and niach? Beautiful, beautiful art. So vice the choice, the chachamim have a power to hefker bez and hefker to allow him to be mafish. So the chachamim who made that distinction between whether it's lahachal or laniach, and the chachamim can give him a koyach. The chachamim who hefker bez and hefker give the apotropos a koyach. I understand, but we actually learned the machlokes if hefker bez and hefker works just to take away your nechosim, or if it can actually transfer your nechosim to somebody else. V'atanya, this is benichusa. Rashi says, "Hapatrupin tarmin umaasrin lahachel v'loy laniach." You know what else hapatrupin could do? Umoichim lahem behema avodim ushvachos. They're allowed to sell on behalf of the assignment if they need to. They can sell behemoths, avodim, shvachos, batim, sadois, ukromim. So all of these things that they're allowed to liquidate is with a very big if. Lahachel avoloy lahaniach. So this is the same thing. How could they make a distinction why they're doing it? Once again, it's because they were empowered to do these things for the immediate needs of the assignment. Umarchilan peiros, yenois, shmonim, usaltois. They can sell wine and all pears, wine, oil, and flour. Lahachel, once again, only to get them what they need to survive. Avaloy lahniach. Don't do business with the assets of the assignment. V'ashlam sukkah, lulav, v'arava, v'sukkah, v'tzitzis. So this lulav and arava, this means pashas lulav, and all the araba meaning. Arava means the arava for Hashan araba. The sukkah, v'tzitzis, because those are all called things that are immediately necessary for the yosem, and the choldovi sheish lekitzvah. And there's also a limit. A sukkah it's a limited amount of what it costs. A rubber, anything that there's a limited amount, and you won't start getting into a black hole, that they're empowered to do. I'm sorry. The suye shofar, to include even the shofar. You might think, let them borrow a shofar. Why don't they need to buy their own shofar? But even the mitzvah of the shofar, since it's kosher, they're allowed to buy. But like them say even. Feeling the mezuzahs, the choldovi sheish lekitzvah. La suye even megillah. But the impost lame tzedakah. If someone knocks on the door, they're not allowed to give tzedakah on behalf of the assignment, because tzedakah is einu davar soif. It's fakert. It's mitzvah gereres mitzvah by tzedakah, right? If you become in the dress, if the people know the estate of the yosem is giving out tzedakah, adarabah, they'll come in flocks. Everyone knows the famous story where there was a very, very, very wealthy man who died, and he wasn't a very big baal tzedakah. When he died, so you can imagine how everybody came to flock to the Yosem, to the child, the Irish, because now they'll get some tzedakah. So he said, I'm sorry, I'm a maimin, and I can't give tzedakah. But what do you mean you're a maimin, you can't give tzedakah? You're a maimin, you should give tzedakah. He says, no, you don't understand. Ani maimin b'amunah shalema v'vias HaMashiach. If I give away all my father's money, and there's Mashiach comes, and my father wakes up, he's going to kill me. So because I'm a maimin, I can't give away his money. Zog to more weiter. The ein poidin aleim as a shvuim. You're not allowed to use the yosem's money even for pidin shvuim. The loy chol dober she'ein lekitzvah. Anything that could lead to more and more, you're not allowed to use yosem's money for that. Lasuya tenchum avelim. Even nicham avelim is not money is not allowed to be used for that. Vein apatropin rashoyin lodin lachayv v'liskos v'nichsi yisam. Let's say there's a claim against the assets of the Yisraelim. There's a claim against the state. The apotropos has no right to go fight the Din Torah on their behalf. The person who's making the claim will have to wait till they become adults and then take them directly to Bezdin. The apotropos cannot represent them for Bezdin. If he's going to win and benefit, why wouldn't you let the apotropos do it? And yes, he might go thinking that he's going to win, and then he might lose. Better we don't let him to represent them for a Din Torah at all. When they'll become adults, they will deal with it themselves. Well, that's why we tell the plaintiff you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait They're not fighting this case now. So vice versa, if the entire with Paskin, they don't have a right to reverse the entire. I guess they get a better deal, but not such a better deal. It's looked more weiter. They not have a very safe trip. They not betrippin Rishayin Limkar Birachot Belig Goyal Bikar. Let's say there's a piece of property that the same have that's far away, hard to manage. So you would think it would make sense to sell that property that's far away and buy a property that's nearby. You're not allowed to do that. Or even Bara Beligal Bayafa. They're not allowed to sell a poor quality property and buy with that money a better piece of property. My timer, the Dilma Mishtatfin. They don't know what the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to do. Maybe the field that they're going to buy that they think is better is going to get ruined. They not betrippin Rishoyin Limker Sadois, Belikach Avodim. They surely cannot sell Sadois, which are hard assets, which are real estate, and sell something like Avodim that could die. But selling an Evid and buy a Sadois, that's for sure allowed. Raw and Yafa, but not Sadois. So the Tana is making distinction as to what we consider absolute good and what we consider not absolute good. Because not every field is for sure going to be nishtadef. Every Evid will for sure die one day, right? You're not allowed to sell avodim and buy fields. My timer, what makes you think these fields are going to be good? Maybe they won't be good, which is what you were probably thinking when you asked the question. An apotropos never has the right to free an Evid, even if for somehow that would be a benefit to the estate. But they are allowed to sell an Evid, and the Chayim and whoever purchased the Evid, they have the full right. This is also sounds like a little benign line, but it's really a very big Shailin Lumdis. Why can an apotropos not sell? Not because Cham doesn't let him. Afilu ena yishayim nefsadim she'avodim boyin liftois atzmon bekesef shenoisim lehem acherim al menach she'en l'tem rishus boy. Afilu achi ein rishayit einan rishayin. Why not? Sharei ein gufon koni lehen l'shachar. The apotropos doesn't own the Eved, so you can't free an Eved unless you're the owner. That's what Rashi says. It almost sounds like a deraisa. Most Rishonim learn that it's more of a kedarabbanan what koyach Bezdin gave him. But it's mashma here that he can't do it at all. But the problem is where it becomes difficult. This is a sugya that we need Rosh Hashivas for. This is a perfect sugya for Rosh Hashivas to say Shiron, because the next line is if you hold that I don't own a part of the Eved, so I can't sell more than I could own. I'm fighting in the same place. So how does the Mechir work? So you're going to need the Chalukim. If you learn it's just Hashayla, how much koyach the Bezdin gives the apotropos, you could make those rules, those lines, you can meter it. But if you hold that I can't fry them because they ain't go from Koni, so then what right does he have to sell? Again, this is all for the Shivas to deal with. Rabbi says, Omerani, Afhu Noisid Demenatzmai. He could buy himself. Not only can I sell him to a third party, I could sell him to himself. The Yosy, and he could leave. It's as if I'm selling it to him. What's the difference if I'm selling it to Bob or to Brian or to John or to Yankel or to Beryl or to Shmuel? Either way it works. But at the end of the day, when the apotropos' mandate is over, he has to come clean at the end. Rashi says, how do you do that? At the end of the day, when the apotropos is discharged, he's got to swear that he doesn't have any of their assets. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, or even if he's done put some stuff in his pocket. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, it's not necessary. They don't have to swear at the end. And Rashi is noshim because it's not their normal custom to be in the business world, to be oisik and masu matan. Avodim Rashi because they're not nemonim, and ketanim are not bnei das. But if the father of the Yisayim picked one of these three people, he's surely allowed to, because he can pick whoever he wants. In most cases nowadays, the wife would become the apotropos if someone was nifter young. How apotropos? These are some fascinating apotropos stories. How apotropos? The Havabishivavusid Reb Meir, he was in the Sviva of Reb Meir. The Havakamazbin Irata Vizavan Abdi. He was selling land and buying avodim. We said that's not allowed. But Shavke Reb Meir didn't allow him. So listen to this story. why aren't you allowed to sell land and buy abadim? Because that's going to destroy the estate of the Yisraelim. You might be chas v'sholom, leave them impoverished. So Reb Meir had a dream. And the Eliris, I want the impoverished Yisraelim. There's a din on them that they have to be impoverished, and that's what I'm trying to do. But to live nice, and you want to build them up, you're not allowed to mix in. How are you mixing in and ruining the destiny that they're supposed to have? Reb Meir still ignored it. Amar, he said, we don't listen to chaloimos. So this is actually a big shaila throughout Shas. You find different cases where sometimes dreams were listened to, sometimes dreams were not listened to. We learned the Gemara, I don't remember where it was, but we learned the Gemara where Rabbi Yehuda was serving a certain type of fish that they said you weren't allowed to eat. I forgot what the name of the fish is. And then he had a dream that he was serving in a restaurant, and he was serving people shkotzim u'remoshim. And he had when he woke up, he panicked that he then turned back his psak and the asr. There's a whole shaila. So those who learn, that shackled him to a durch the sugi again, and when he turned a durch the sugi again, that's why he passed him differently. But about it, so there's a lot of rate on it. So Dr. more about it. How about trade? The Igru Basat. This is also a fascinating story. Yeah. So here you have a fascinating story. How about trade? The Igru Basat. There are two people that they couldn't get along, and when did they always get into a fight? The Chol by Shimshei, every Arab Shabbos in the afternoon, every week they got into a fight. However, they kept on getting into a fight. Always Arab Shabbos. There are those who say Vos Punkt Arab Shabbos. Arab Shabbos is a special Zman Mesugal to get into a fight with your wife. Never mind the stress and the pressure of meeting the deadline of Shabbos, but that's when Chava did the Avera of the Tzadas, and one of the reasons why she was giving the mitzvah of Adlakas Neiros, I mean, even the man's Mechuv in Adlakas Neiros, but the woman is Mechuv in Adlakas Neiros because she's the one who's in charge of the house. Now, those who learn is she's the one responsible for bringing back Shalom Bayis into the house, which Neiros leads to Shalom Bayis because you don't trip over everything. It's because she brought the Tigra by being over on the Chet of the Eitzadas. So Friday afternoon is a dangerous time. So lighting candles makes Shalom Bayis. So what happened was, Ikler of Merlos, and he saw that these guys, something's funnier, every Friday after they're fighting, he's got to get down to the bottom of it. So he figured out what he's going to do. He moved in with them for 3 Fridays. So they're not going to fight in front of him. After 3 weeks, they made peace. He was able to work it out. Shamei, Reb Meir heard the Amar that the Sultan was saying, "Vai the Afka Reb Meir who got from a basic. This guy evicted me. I used to have a great time here every Friday afternoon, and now I'm evicted." Which also tells you that Shalom brings the Shechina. Machloikis actually invites in the Sultan, and once the Machloikis goes away, the Sultan finds himself homeless. Who apotropos the Havabishiv Evusay Rabbi Shua ben Levi. There was an apotropos who was in the environs of Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Turi. He would sell land and buy oxen. And Rabbi Shua ben Levi did not say anything. When we learned Pashas that he should have protested that. You're not allowed to do that. Why didn't he protest? Because he held like Rabbi Yosy. The Tanya Amar Rabbi Yosy, I never referred to my wife as my wife. I never called my ox my ox. I called my wife Basi because she's the whole ikra of the house. Ulushairi Sadai. And I called my ox my field. You know why? Because the ox is what makes the field remain in good condition. It's the ox that contributes to the well-being of the field. If I would call my wife, "You look like a house," she would throw me out. I remember I was once going to traffic court, and the judge was a lady that she looked like a mountain. She was a big fat lady. She had so many laws in her. She didn't just pass the bar; she passed the whole steel factory. So everyone was addressing her, "Your worship, your worship." And I got Mavovo, and I said, "Your battleship," by mistake. Because talk to more about it. Oh, gewaltig. Very good. That's right. By keeping that in mind, that will save you. Hanu Yasmi Davasmichi Gabi Ahusapto. So similar to our Mishnah's case, there was no official appointment, but they hung out by this woman. Havala Tursa, they had an ox. Shakla was a vintin halayu. This woman sold the ox on behalf of the assignment. So also Kroivim Lakamed Rab Nachman, the greater family came to Rab Nachman and said, "She's messing them up. Amrulay Maya Vidita, Dizovna. How could she sell?" How could she sell? Amalahu, Rav Nachman says, calm down. What she's doing is perfectly appropriate. Yisayim Shemsayim Chayetz Balabayis. Tanan. This is the case. This is a typical case. Whereas the Yisayim were naturally gravitated to somebody, and this person is helping them. That has a din of purpose. She had a right to sell. But the problem is, she sold it for $100. It was worth $500. Rav Nachman says, calm down. When she sold it, it was only worth $100. The price of oxen went up later, so that it's perfectly legit. So they told her, and here you have a new chiddush in Yisayim, yes, she sold it to the buyer. The buyer made a mashiach and took the animal, but the buyer hadn't yet paid for the ox. Amalus, Rav Nachman said, now that's an important piece of information, because if they didn't pay it, then I will be willing to reverse the sale. Because even though everybody else in the world, to be kind of a taltlin, you make mashicha by Yisoimim, it's different. Because what did he say? We treat them with the same reverence of hektish, unless it was paid for, we don't consider the kinyan was made. So therefore, these people who bought it from the Yisoimim, since they didn't pay it, and it went up, too bad for them, the sale is reversed, and the Yisoimim get the more valuable oxen back. Chamrei de Ravna Ukva Yasma, Ravna Ukva Rachman died, and he left over Yisoimim, and he had wine. And what happened was the apotropos sold it. Mashchua ba'arba arba. The person made mashicha on their wine, and the amount of money that they made up was going to be for $4 a chavis, or for dinarim, or for whatever. Vayaker, and then after the mashicha, but before they paid, the price of wine went up. The kambashita shita. It was really worth 6, so it went up by 50%. So also the Kamei Rav Nachman, they went to Rav Nachman. Amalu, he says, no, you reverse the sale, and the Yisraelim get the extra money. Because Hainu Rav Chinoi bar Idim Shmuel, Rav Chinoi bar Idim Shmuel, Nichse Yisraelim Kehektish, V'lei Miknei Ela B'Kaspa. So therefore, if someone bought from Yisraelim and didn't pay right away, and it goes up, too bad. Now we're going to discuss what Chaim said earlier, that you always say Yad HaYisraelim Al Hel Yoim. So now we're going to see 4 different cases how this manifests itself. So the first case. Oh, Rabunat, okay. What did I say? Okay, thank you very much. So Moshe Peri Miyasmi. What happens if someone was buying pears from the Yisraelim and they made Mishicha but didn't pay? A yakar and it went up. That's the case we just discussed. So Yada, they benefit from the increase in value. What if it's Zoil? What if they were Moshe and it went down? So now the question is, do you say that he gets to give it back to them? Because there was no Kiddush Kesef made. There we say lo yehei koyach hedjit chamer mehektish. Okay, we would say that how you talking that if it was a hedjit, the hedjit is protected, and if it was hektish should lose. So avada there again, the Yisraelim get to play both sides of the coin. How about the opposite? Amshichu peri liyasmi. The Yisraelim were buying pears, and they only made meshicha, which is not a good kinyan for Yisraelim, and the yaket went up. So are you going to say too bad the Yisraelim have to pay more? No. Anybody else, you wouldn't be able to back out of the sale. So too by Yisraelim, you cannot back out of the sale. What about Zoil? Well, what if it went down? Then we have again their advantage of requiring kesef. Sabra mina. At first glance, we would have thought Hainu de Rab Chaniloi bar Idiyam Shmuel, because once again, since it's technically not a kinyan, I'm going to take advantage of the lower price. However, Rab Shisha said no. This case is different. No, this wouldn't be good. It's not beneficial to the Yisraelim for them to say that no, I'm not paying you what we made up. I'm paying you less because I didn't pay you yet, and the kinyan that I made is not a good kinyan. We don't let them say that. You know why? You know why it's bad for them? What if we need to buy pears for the Yisraelim and nobody's going to want to sell it to them? They'll make a mashicha, and people will say, "I'm not selling it to you because if the price drops, you're gonna pay me less." So you know what? I'm not releasing the pears until you come with COD. In order not to subject Yisraelim to such a potential peril, if it goes down, we make them take it. No, in one case the Yisraelim are buying, and in one case the Yisraelim are selling. Zoil is who they were buying, and Zoil is who they were selling, and the other case was Zoil is who they were buying. What about you have a Yas Mezuzah Peri? What if the Yisraelim paid? So they made their Kinyan Kesef, and then Zoyla went down. Once again, Lo Yehei Koyach Hedid Chamer Min Hektish. Once again, you say the same svara. Even if it was Hedid, they would not have to keep it. A Yakar, if it went up, that if it went up, they get to keep it anyway, even though they didn't make Mashiach yet. And again, Rav Shesha argued, Amal Rav Shesha, Bared Rav Idi, Harayuliditi. This is also bad for them to say that if it went up when they tried to buy it, that they get the advantage. You know why? Because the Asalamemelahu, what are people going to tell them? Nisrufu chitchem ba'aliyah. If we say that once they give kesef, before they make Mashiach, they get to keep it, you know what's going to happen? What if there's a fire there? What's going to happen is the person selling it will say, your stuff got burnt. Your stuff got burnt. We don't want them to say that, so therefore we say that the sale is not a sale. What about Yoav Luhuzuze Li Yasmi Aperi? People wanted to buy from the assignment, and they were given money to buy parish that belonged to the assignment. Ayakar, and then they go up. So they did the kesef, but not the Mashiach. We say Lo Yehei Koyach Hedid Chomer Mehektish. And therefore, if it goes up, they could demand more money. Zoil, what if the parish went down? That since they made a Kinyan Kesef, they're stuck with it, and if it went down, too bad. They bought it already. The same thing. This is not going to be beneficial. It's very short-sighted to think that this is beneficial, because the long term, it's going to cause them huge problems. The Yisraelim are going to need money, and because of that, they're going to want to sell parish and get money, so they have money for what they need. And no one's going to be willing to give them the money until they can deliver the pairs. So they'll put them into a crunch. So basically, the shadow, do you look at the immediate transaction, or do you look at long term, what's ultimately going to benefit them, and that's how you make your decision. What are we looking for? What are we looking for? Right. Up or down? Yeah. So this is she's arguing on the freedom of cases. Right. Amar Abashi, Anov Rav Kahana, me and Rav Kahana, Chasmina Nashtara, the Ima, the Zira Yasma, we signed on the star of the mother of Zira Yasma, who was the apotropos. The Mizavna Ira, she sold land, even though normally you're never allowed to sell land, but she sold it Lakarga to pay head tax, and that had to be paid right away. Not only that, but we let her sell these properties even before there was a proper marketing campaign done on the properties to get the full fair value. We even allowed that. Why? For these three things, which have to be done immediately without delay will cause problems. They can do a sole source contract. They don't have to put it out for tender. So Kaga is to pay head tax. Mizoni is they need food. They can't wait 3 months till they get their food. They need it now. Or Lekfura if they need money to bury the base. Amram Tzava was the apotropos the Yasmahava. I assume Tzava means he was in the dyeing business. He was a dyer. I assume that's what it means. He was an apotropos of Yisraelim. But also the Kroivim came to complain that he was not doing a good job. You know what they told him? They told him, look, he goes to the finest men's stores and makes for himself the finest suits and the finest shirts, and he's doing all this on the tab of the assignment. Amalu Rav Nachman said, calm down. There's nothing wrong with what he's doing. He's dealing with a multi-million-dollar estate that he has to represent him on the world stage. So if he comes in with his schlepperish shiny suit with dandruff on the collar, they're going to laugh him out of the room. He has to look the part. You got to play the part. Like someone once said, you want to be successful in business? Dress British, think Yiddish. That's what I want to dress British, think Yiddish. So of course what he's doing is good. But then they told him, but look at that. He's eating his meals from their money. And you know how I know? It's because of Eloy Ahmed. There's no way he can afford the fancy meals and the fancy restaurants that he's eating in. So he's clearly partying off the tab of the assignment. So Rav Nachman said, no, don't say that. Amor Mitzia Ashkach. Maybe he won a lottery. You can't, without any proof, make an allegation that the apotropos is taking advantage. But then they asked, Valkamafsid, and Rashi teaches it, he's ruining the properties. He's not taking care of the fields. He's cutting trees down, which are bad. He's doing things that are harmful to the property. He's not doing his job. Oh, That's already a reason to get rid of him. If you could bring me proof that he's damaging their assets, then we'll get rid of him. Apotropos the mafsid, an apotropos is damaging the estate, misalkinan lay. You could get rid of him. The Itmar we learned, apotropos the mafsid, Rav Huna Amarav misalkinan lay. The Rav Shila Amri loy misalkinan lay. Even if he's doing damage, once he's appointed, too bad. He is in charge, like a prime minister. The Hilchasa misalkinan lay. The halach is you can get rid of him. You could impeach him if it's proven in Bezdin that he is damaging the assets. Then you could get rid of him. So remember we had a machlokes in the Mishnah. Does an apotropos who was appointed by the father swear, or does an apotropos appointed by Bezdin swear? My time, what's the reason why for a father he swears? Because why wouldn't you make an apotropos swear? Because they'll say, if you're going to make me swear, I don't need the whole thing. I'm doing you a favor. I'm helping out your kids, and now you want to make me swear? Forget it. Find yourself a different apotropos. I'm not doing it. But if the father appointed him, then he will be willing to remain in apotropos, even though he's forced to swear. Why? Because he loved Islay Nomine. If he didn't have a special benefit from the father, apotropos, he would have never accepted this apotropos for a total stranger. He took it over because it was a very dear friend of his who he must have benefited from a lot in the life of the owner, of the father, and therefore he'll accept, even if he has to swear, he's doing it because it's out of obligation. But on the other hand, if Bezdin asked him to do it, because that's Milsa Ba'alma, he's doing a voluntary service. It's simply a volunteer. We're asking people to volunteer. I don't have a connection to the guy. I'm volunteering for Bezdin, but if you're going to make me swear, to hell with it. I don't need it. But Abba Shaul had the exact opposite approach. Abba Shaul, my timer, Minu Bezdin Yishava. Why do you swear by Minu Bezdin? Because we're not afraid a person's going to hold back. Because Bahiyana, the Kanova Kalekala, the Inish Mehemnahu, the Hasamach Alebedina, Mishim Shul Imagine you're appointed by Bezdin to be a money manager for Yosy. That's the highest level of Nemanos. Can you imagine after you finish that stint, you can get a job anywhere, any corporation, because everyone knows that Bezdin says this man is foolproof, trustworthy. That's very worth his while. He's benefiting a tremendous amount. It's not just benevolence and kindness that he's volunteering for the job. He has great benefit from it. And therefore, even though they force him to swear, he's happy to do that because there's a huge benefit to him to be a apotropos from Bezdin. But Minav Yisam Lo Yishava, because he's doing a favor for the father. They're doing favors for each other. But if you force him to swear, he will refuse the job. That for Bezdin you do swear, for a person you don't swear. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Zeh v'zeh Yishav. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds that both apotropos have to swear. V'halacha k'dvarav, no matter what an apotropos has to swear. Tanya Rabbi Chachlifa bar Marava Kamed Rabbi Vo, apotropos shemineu avi Yisayimim, Yishava he swears. You know what? Mipnei shu nois yisocher, because he's a shemer socher. Correct. The Gemara Amar Lei. Rabbi Vo said, "At Isis Kaven v'chayles Lei." Well, you know for a fact that every apotropos gets paid. Are you the one? You go around with a measuring cup and measure up a cup of goodies for every apotropos? Nonsense. Nothing being paid. It's like he's like a noisacher because he has a side benefit. Whether he has a side benefit because his father did him favors, there was some benefit there. Therefore, he swears. But he's not mamish. He's not mamish a shemer socher. Okay, Gabaltik. We're just on time, so we'll stop here. Have a wonderful, wonderful day and a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos, and have a good Shabbos. And remember, this afternoon we have to be super calm because it's the Erev Shabbos that we got warning. It's a good time for arguments, so we gotta be extra vigilant on Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Oh, he made every Erev Shabbos a special time. Zusammenbringen Menschen. Why should he go on?